But then the more men shy away from taking the courses, going to school, is the more the females right now, with all the empowerment that exists for women, they will venture into the fields that we as men are intimidated, and we make these things into a female space. And now you have what you call academic gatekeeping. There are a lot of men who want to see themselves at the top of the ladder. They want to see themselves as CEOs, as managers, but then the only barrier between them and that are the academics. And now they find themselves working amongst female peers who are senior to them. Some of them, they're intimidated by that. They have experiences of feeling less purposeful because their boss is a woman.
Hello, everyone. And today it's another episode of Ideation, where we discuss ideas and ideas for development, constructive ideas. And with me today, we have a special guest, you call it that, Mr. Siobhan Bryan, who is a public speaker who joined Toastmasters in International and attained the highest honor as a distinguished Toastmaster. He is the current president of UE Global Compass St. Lucia Toastmasters Club, which he co-chartered, and is a past president of the Public Service Toastmasters Club of St. Lucia. Siobhan Bryan is a former youth parliamentarian and a recipient of the Castries North Youth Awards for Outstanding Youth in Social Development in 2021. He has done several speeches for schools, businesses, communities, and national organizations, and across the region. He launched the Empower Men project, which aims to empower males through social education, activities, psychological support. Siobhan is a full-time entrepreneur and enjoys history, music, and connecting with communities. So, everyone help me welcome Siobhan as we go ahead and discuss. I think he has a very good background in what we are aiming to do here at Ideation, and we will aim to discuss today why young men have shied away from higher education, and this expresses itself in the turning away from institutions altogether. So, what's up, Siobhan? How are you? How are you doing? What are you working on? How are things going with you?
All right. Well, thank you, Kevin. Thanks for the invite. I am doing good. I'm doing good. I'm very much inspired by this topic today because it's a topic that I think a lot of men that I have spoken to, they intimately identify with having those what I call academic barriers to their own self-fulfillment, and they express it in different ways. They will say things like, me, I finish with school, I do my school already, I made that school thing for me. And you'll hate expressed in many casual ways, but it exposes for me a deeper issue in terms of our own fulfillment as men. Because what I do identify as male fulfillment would be the ability to go out, fulfill your purpose, earn an income, provide, and also educate and nurture yourself to be not just a physical provider, but an emotional provider as well. And some of the barriers to that would be our academic qualifications. And what I've realized is that when it comes to academics in St. Lucia, there are a lot of cultural traditions and factors that exist that influence men to shy away from higher education. And in an economy like St. Lucia, which is heavily based on service, a lot of the jobs that are provided would be of a I don't want to say an academic nature, but these particular jobs would require qualifications that you would have to go through formal schooling. So you would get entry level positions that would require, let's say, maximum a tertiary level education, and then you have lower and upper senior positions that would require first and second level degrees. So because of that now, you have a dominance of females who have.
Every study, every statistic tells the same story. Our boys and men are falling behind in education, in health, in physical well being, in economic stability. At Ideas for Boys and Men, we've made it our mission to dig deeper, to understand the real root causes, and to deliver practical, powerful solutions that restore hope and direction. Whether you're a young man searching for purpose or someone who cares deeply about the next generation, you don't have to figure it out alone. Visit ideasslu.org. Explore our services, join the movement, and discover how you can find purpose and meaning and direction in your life. Ideas for Boys and Men, because your future matters.
Taken up these positions. And recently I was reading that St. Lucia is second in the highest number of female managers per capita, only behind the country Seychelles. And that tells you a lot about what type of economy we are dealing with and why there is a decreased participation of males in higher education. So what I have started is to do first a series of videos that addresses male purpose, as in who we are, what are we here for, and how can we be our best self. And I'm hoping by the end of that program, because it's an ongoing program and effort, that males would understand their self-esteem, because culturally, a lot of males are not even reassured of who they are. Sometimes they're just left to discover who they are for themselves through the community, through peers, through relationships, and so forth. So my effort is to first instill that self-esteem among males so that males now can endeavor bit by bit to venture into those areas that they feel intimidated for or they may consider traditionally female, such as education.
Education. Okay, wonderful. So you're doing that with your organization, Empower Man Project. That's the name of your organization.
Yes. Yes,
and,
the
and how did
empowerment
that
project.
organization? Yeah, how did that organization come about, and how is it doing?
Okay, well, as early as 2018, I have been having conversations first within myself when I saw what was happening socially. I felt like the justice system, based on those stories that got a lot of airplay, I felt like the justice system was not adequately vindicating men. There are lots of stories out there with men who seem to be upstanding citizens that through the justice system, they get their children and their assets taken away. And that seems very fair in comparison to a justice system that should have, in my opinion, provided equality. But that justice system, from what I have seen and I've heard, it had seemed to accommodate women and children, with them being the more vulnerable gender out of the two. So I felt at some point that there needs to be a balance in terms of the support that goes towards men. I felt like in society we had a lot of NGOs coming up and empowering women in science, in technology, in education, in agriculture. And I felt that there was no avenue to adequately empower men. So when I started having those conversations with some peers, I got the feedback that instead of complaining about this reality, then you should be the change that you want to see. I decided to endeavor register first. My first initiative was the Communicate project. And at that time, I felt a leaning towards younger men in schools, that I would empower them through soft skills so that when they do leave the secondary school system, they would have that head start to get a job or to start an entrepreneurship journey. And as I grew, my focus shifted from mainly young men and I moved towards adult men, because I was having conversations with these men and I realized a lot of men in society are hurt. I also realized in my empowering endeavors that a lot of children had negative views about their fathers and the men in their lives in comparison to positive views. And I found that very disheartening. So my motivation from that point was to start a movement that uplifts men. And despite one section of society believing that it is a patriarchal society, I think over time it has shifted to a matriarchal society. And there's nothing wrong with that. But the ramifications of it is that there's a bitter view towards men. Men are not seen solely as providers and strong individuals. There are people out there who see men only for the crimes that previous men may have committed. They see men for the desires that have befallen men from time immemorial. They see men in a very myopic view as being basic. And I felt that it was imperative for us as men to change that narrative and allow society to see men as protectors, as providers, as being the pillars of the family. And that is where the empowerment project came from. And it started from just being a Facebook initiative and something that I did in my pastime, to now having and wanting to host events, reaching out to different organizations, sponsoring children, young men, and getting myself involved anywhere that I am welcomed or anywhere that I see requires that level of upliftment.
Yeah, that's a very noble endeavor, and I'm going to ask you one more question before we start going back and forth with our different ideas, because we too we have ideas for boys and men, and we have seen the problem as well. But the problem is very categorized based on the book that I read, Boys Crisis, and in that book it explains that it's a really a global problem in some sense, and whenever something is tend to take a form of a global problem, it tends to go deeper. As I would use a word loosely, it's a spiritual problem. It's an ideological problem. So even in China, they have a Chinese word for men who fail. In Japan, they have a Japanese term for men who fail, and in Europe, I think it's called the NEET, not employed, educated, or in training. It's a NEET. It's a form of, and there's a new word now that's a simp. I think in the US they call it a simp. So in the wider culture, there are words that are used to explain men that are completely failing. But before we move into that, I want to ask you one more question, and that question is, how do you think education, because what we are discussing right now is how men are moving away from the institutions, more particularly education and higher education, and how can education help solve that problem? Because like you correctly said, we have a lot of young men who are saying, I don't need education, I don't need to be educated, I can just go out and I can just work and I can just make money at an early age. And at a young age, when you're making $500 or when you're making $1,000, that's fine, because you're young, you don't have much responsibilities, and they're saying they can make enough money. They see a few.
Working towards a valuable aim in life, one that benefits you, your family, your community, and your society, has been proven to give men a deeper sense of purpose and meaning. It transforms idle, destructive aggression into focused, ambitious action. One book that captures this truth is Purpose Driven. The meaning of life is found in the purpose to live. If you are a young boy or man searching for direction, this is one of the books you should investigate. because discovering your purpose is the first step towards changing your life. Get your copy on Amazon or call 725-8562.
Persons who the 1% who made it, let's just say, without formal education, but there is an underlying education with Reno. There is an underlying education with people who did leave, but there is an underlying education. Listen to how they speak, listen to how they carry themselves, listen to how they conduct business. You can have crystallized intelligence, and you can have let's say formal intelligence, but there is an underlying intelligence that is required to move up the ranks, if you're thinking about that in a positive, constructive way. So how do you think education would bring education in for young men to be able to fix the problem that we know is existent?
Okay. Well, for me, it starts with the culture. And I think our culture for too long, especially considering that historically St. Lucia has moved from having two secondary schools to now we have universal education. But the mindset still exists that the correct way to have self-fulfillment as a young man is to go to school, get a job, go back to school, and ensure that you repeat the cycle until you have reached your terminal academic level, and then you proceed. The culture that does exist is that we must go to school, and there is an underlying education. The fundamental education is necessary. A lot of the times we look at modern day successes and we take it out of context. For example, when people look at the journey of the founder of Facebook, Mark Zuckerberg, they label him as a university dropout. They label people like Bill Gates.
But he is a university dropout. He is a university dropout.
He's a university dropout. But a lot of times people don't remember that he still went to school. So they figure, okay, him being a university dropout, that means I can drop out at school. I can drop out from school at any level and I still will be able to make it if I have the wit and the know-it-all when it comes to business. Now that has to be dispelled because the fundamental education that is required would be the maths, the English. We must learn how to read and write. How are you going to manage a business if you don't know numbers? How are you going to create an account if you don't have the necessary documents? You must be able to at least get yourself to a level where then if you have to take that risk or if you have to take that plunge, then you are still adequately equipped with a plan B. But the mistake that a lot of men make is that they make that their plan A and nothing else. But back to culture, we have a man must provide mentality. So for men, a lot of men coming out from school may see that sitting in a classroom is a waste of time, especially in our physical form where some of us at 23, we have reached peak development. Our body is at apex mode and we want to go out and do something. But sitting in a university may not be as appealing to you as maybe working in a garage, lifting up an engine, taking some tools, going on a demolition site and whatnot. There's also the hands-on work where a lot of men, they idolize mechanics, they look at masonry, they look at plumbing and electrical, and they see that type of work as more masculine and practical as compared to bookwork. And still, such fields do require certification. And this is what we must teach, that even though you have decided that traditional education outside of technical work is not your first plan, but then going for hands-on work does require certification. And what we must be able to translate to men is that a sacrifice is necessary. You must sacrifice and put in the work for you to get to that side. If you want to be an electrician, you don't just drop out of school and go and understudy an electrician. I have met so many men in the field of construction who have worked in excess of 15 years under trained technical guys, and they cannot go on their own. They cannot practice on their own because they still require trained technical people to sign off on their work. And that is very sad. I know an architect, for example. He knows everything. He has the technical know-how in terms of drawing. He knows how to do his designs. He knows how to formulate plans and so forth. But he cannot issue his work formally as an independent architect because he's not certified. And he has been doing that for 15 years. He requires a senior architect to oversee his work in order for that work to be compensated to him. And he expresses the frustration of doing that because he has been in the field, he understudied, but he does not want to go to school to get that certification. And there are lots of scenarios like that in plumbing, in masonry, in electrical work that exists. And then you have to ask yourself, why don't men want to go to school? So then I started to do some questions and answers and a bit of research. And I realized that for a lot of men, based on cultural pressures to provide and to make meaningful value of themselves while they are still at a prime age, they stay away from traditional schooling and they go hustle, quote unquote. Because I know the true definition of hustle means to steal or to swindle, but then we call it hustle as in, you're going to make some extra money or you're going to make some extra cash. They see higher education as a long detour when a lot of men come from single parent homes, and those single parent homes would require them, as soon as they leave school, to contribute to the household. They must find a way to pay bills. They must find a way to take on family responsibilities and give money where it is needed in the context of a family. Going to school or traditional higher education does not give you that reality. So aside from the cultural expectations, there's also the societal expectations. There are actually some men out there who believe that going to school is less masculine than pursuing hands-on work. So you feel a greater sense of being if you're working as a mechanic, you're under a vehicle, you're doing this, you're doing that with your hands, and you can show at the end of the day, this is how you worked hard.
Because
But
let me just share a point of view, because that's a very good point that you're making. It's about there is this idea, and in order for me to understand, well, when you study human nature, you have to study human nature across civilizations, across kingdoms, across stories, across cultures, so that you can get a better picture of the idea that you're bringing across. And there's this, I read this Greek story about a young man named Icarus. And Icarus, he was trapped on top of a mountain with I think it's a mountain or a castle, with his father. His father was working for a king. And after the king was done, after he was done working with the king, the father, the king imprisoned them, and they put them on top of a big building or a big mountain. So in order for the father to escape, the father created wings the father made wings, because he was a builder with his hands. He made wings for his son and himself with wax, a candle wax. So they had to fly away from that island. They had to fly away from that place. And the father told Icarus, which is the son, do not fly too close to the sun, the actual sun, and do not fly too close to the water, because the sun might burn your wings and the water might wet the wings. The wings is not yours, it's created with wax, and you might fall and die. But as Icarus was flying away from that island, escaping that king, he got a little too excited about his ability, and he started to fly too close to the sun. And because he was flying too close to the sun melted his wings, and he fell and died in the ocean. Now, the point that I'm trying to bring across, when you listen to those stories have some fundamental narrative structures that you need to look into. When I tell young men, if you want to be let's say welding, you want to be in welding or you want to be in plumbing, the bottom of the hierarchy of welding, you have everybody at the bottom, the welders, those with the physical skills, which we appreciate. I appreciate the physical skills. I appreciate the skills itself to be able to weld or do the plumbing. But as you move higher up that hierarchy, as you move higher up that mountain, it doesn't become physical skills anymore. It becomes project managing, it becomes organizational structure, it becomes rules, it becomes policy, it becomes all of those things. So when you are saying you don't need to be educated to be a welder or you don't need to be educated to be a plumber, you will always be working for somebody that received the education you didn't want to receive, because they are the ones that hire you. They're the ones that write the proposals for the projects. They're the ones that get the funding for the projects. They don't want that manage you. They're the ones that hire you. They're the ones that pay you. So the minute you move higher up the mountain, the minute you move higher up the hierarchy, the work becomes more or less physical and more intellectual, mental. So I'm trying to find out in my own experience, where did young men get the thinking that, and it goes back to a definition of education. What does it mean to be educated? Education, and I'm going to talk about how the education system is not catering to males. What does it mean to be educated? Education is not having a plaque on a table with masters on it. Education comes from the etymology of the word, which is educate, educo, which means to draw out. To be educated is to have the ability to think and speak. Thinking. The thinking is a tool to solve problems, and we pay all the payments we do, the money transactions we do in an economic system is towards the solution to problems. So now men are moving away from learning how to think, because when you sit down, I'm a teacher. When I put my boys to sit down, I use maths, English, science and social studies to help them practice how to think in a social studies manner, practice how to think in a mathematical manner, practice how to speak language. Just basically two subjects that are English and maths. You use English and maths in science, you use English and maths in social studies, in society, to practice how to think. And your thinking needs to be able to solve a problem. So a lot of them, when they told me that, I'm telling you, but you only want to do the physical work. Are you working for somebody? Yes. What kind of work the person do? The person is doing a more abstracted form of work. So I cannot understand why they only want to remain at the bottom of the hierarchy. And those that move up the hierarchy, look at, for lack of a better example, because a lot of what we talk about is the construction field. Look at Renault. Renault is managing projects across the region. Do you see him? I'm not saying he didn't start off by lifting a shovel, and that's not important. Yes, he started off that way. You must have the skill. But to get up that level of the hierarchy, you must be able to manage people. You must be able to speak to people. You must be able to read the policies. You must be able to learn how to sign a check. You must be able to understand those abstracted things, the ability to think abstractly and solve problems. So I cannot understand why education today has pushed women so towards the higher order aspect of things, and men are falling behind, say the only thing I need to do is to lift the shovel. Yes, that is good too. Yes, you need to do the plumbing. Yes, you need to do that. But one day, when you become a master plumber, when you become a master welder, you'd want to start your business. You'd want to hire a few people. You'd want to put something together for yourself. That's where the education comes in, the ability to think and the ability to organize and to speak and to articulate and to solve problems. You cannot say you do not want to do that. And it's amazing to me that men saying, and we're going to discuss how the education system, based on this book, I read this book, Reaching Boys, Teaching Boys, how the education system itself is not catering for male learning. But go ahead, tell me what you think about that.
Well, yes, I'm in definite agreement with that, because I think a lot of men we look at, for example, my experience going through school, I went to 3 schools. I went to RC Boys, I went to Dame Paulette, and then I went to St. Mary's College. And I could remember in RC Boys, we had a lot of guys who were just academically gifted. You would put a test paper in front of them and they would ace it. When these boys fell behind in terms of their performance, the parents used to be called in. There was a discussion. Of course, I was young at the time, so I don't know the intimate details, but it seemed to be a more deliberate effort at the primary level. At the secondary level, interestingly, when I went to college and there were boys in my classroom who were not performing up to standard, the first comment you would hear from peers is, Mitch shouldn't have gone to college. They should have sent him to a technical school. So I do believe that there is a notion that exists that when a male does not perform academically, he's pushed towards skills training as an alternative instead of trying to understand what is wrong. Because now in my work, I do understand that there are a lot of factors that contributes to a level of delinquency, and I'm sure as a teacher you can have a day-long session to talk about how factors at home and factors in a child's personal life can influence their learning. And instead of, again, pushing boys towards skills training as an alternative, which can work and is healthy, we do have other factors. We have, for example, the lack of motivation. Why boys are not motivated to do well in school. You know, what are the plans that the parents or the guardians have for said boys after they have completed their particular academic qualifications. So you are lacking plans in some cases, and that has its way in the life of boys. The other thing that I've noticed is that there's a higher dropout rate based on the figures in St. Lucia, a higher dropout rate of boys than girls at the secondary school level. And it feels like a place where they struggle and they are punished more than they are rewarded. I'm also of the notion that boys at their physical peak, it is very challenging for the untrained teacher to command the respect of boys who at peak times during the day want to be physically active instead of
Yep.
sitting in a classroom. And sometimes the desire of these boys to be physically active and go out and express themselves is so overwhelming that it's regarded as disorderly behavior, delinquency, and so forth. What measures are being placed by those institutions and by the respective practitioners to understand how to naturally direct the energy of those boys? There's also literacy gaps, lack of support in their formative
Majority
years.
of our boys cannot read. Majority of our boys cannot read. Grade 4, I was reading a study, and even in my experience, majority of our boys from grade 4 going all the way to first year secondary school, second year secondary school, we have a big reading problem. And a reading problem speaks to another type of problem, a concentration problem, the ability to pay attention and decode information on a page and reason and think. And that's why our maths problem is a very big problem. Critical thinking plays a role into that. So pushing back on that, what you said is so correct. What you said is so correct. The education system doesn't cater for teaching males. Males evolutionarily, look at males. We were hunters, and we go way back. How we evolved to creating this time that is created now, because of they call society a patriarchal society in a negative connotation, because right now it is safe. Right now we have no snakes coming in the house. Right now we have no lions, no negative, animals that will destroy us. No, we have none of those things. But now it is easy, it is soft, it is everything. We have taken care of all the threats. Right now, the complaint is it is patriarchal. But when the threats was there, when we had to go and carry water, when there was no water in the pipes, when we had to do all of that, it was not patriarchal. So right now, with the comfort of everything that's creating the problem, it's patriarchal, because as we evolve as men, we will hunting. We were out doing things. We were out making things happen. But now we are taught to sit down and listen, which I have appreciation for. I have appreciation for the sit down and listen model, which is a more feminine model. But how do we cater for the more extrinsic males, the more males who learn with the body, the more males who want to stand up and move and manipulate the world with their hands? And not because they cannot manipulate the world abstractly with the mind, that doesn't mean they cannot manipulate the world with their hands. They are more pragmatic, they are more kinesthetic, they are more hands-on, they are more playful in nature. Men are naturally that way. We have testosterone. You have that engine of testosterone is activated, and you have sat down, you have to sit down one place for 8 hours. Men work towards a goal, men work towards a purpose, men work towards a vision, a mission. And just to talk about that, I use that same thing in my grade 4 class. I bought 2 kits because my grade 4 boys, they like football. I bought one Messi kit and one Ronaldo kit. And I had a class of boys that and I just used the philosophy of working towards a valuable aim. I tested that in my class. And the boys I had, they were challenging boys based on behavior, based on academics. And I said to myself, those boys can learn. I have a philosophy that's written in my book, Purpose Driven. The meaning of life is finding a purpose to live. I hung the two shirts in the class, and you could go to RC, they can tell you that. I'm not making up that stories. You can ask any RC teacher that. I hung the 2 shirts in the class. And I say, okay, in order for you to get those 2 shirts, here's what we need to do for the term, for first month. Here's what we need to do for the term. Here's what we need to do for the week. And here's what we need to do for the day. And you could see they struggling to put themselves in place. They struggling to set because they want the shirt. You know, you're not going to get it perfect one time. You know, you always tell them, well, and I put a star system. And if you get all correct in your exercise, you get a star. So the person with the most stars throughout the term, they would be getting the kit. But boys that never did the homework before, running around town, run and collect the homework from the mother. The mother have to run to the school. Say he forgot his homework. It's not his fault. Boys were on top of the P's and Q's because they, at that age, they cannot abstract the aim. At that age, the aim must be seen. They must be able to look up. Like we're looking up when we worship in God or we worship in Christ. You must have a physical aim, you must have a mental aim, and you must have a spiritual aim. Christ is our spiritual aim. But at that level of cognitive development, they are not able to abstract the aim of, I want you to study for you to get a good grade to go to SMC. No, they must be able to see the valuable aim. They must be able to aim at something, and you helping them move towards that aim. The boys, they say that couldn't read. They started reading a lot better when they left my class. The boys that was getting 40, 40, at MST, 60, 70. And I can say that because that's true. You can look at the report books. You can look at it. The parents up to now calling me and telling me he's doing better now. Parents wanted me to go up with their sons, asking like, what did I do? All I did was work on the psychological aspect of knowing that men move towards a valuable aim. And this book talks about the same thing. Boys learn using games. Yeah. And a game must have a valuable aim. And a game must have rules towards achieving that valuable aim. And the minute you can do that for them explicitly, but that's what football is. Football, the goal is right there. Basketball, the basket is right there. Cricket, the runs is right there. That's why you find the sports are more masculine in nature, because they know the aim. And the same ones that breaking the rules in society, they will never break the rules when they play in football. Yeah. They will tell that man, you guys say you're not playing the game fair. Those that breaking the rules in society, they will tell you play the game fair when they play in football. Play the game fair when you play in basketball. They literally tell you that because the rules of the game, the morality, because they know why they're doing it, they respect it more. And I've tested that in my class. That's tested. That's not theory. That's not theoretical again. That's not theory. It's practical. Working towards an aim. Boys learn by, when I read that in some other books, boys move, and in myself, I need a goal to survive. I need a purpose. I need an aim. If I do not have an aim, what am I doing? No, women are different. Women are more managerial. The woman will work for her boss. Her boss will tell her, Sandra, do that. She don't need to ask why. She just go ahead and do it. she just go ahead and say and do what the boss said to do. But the male will ask, but so why are we doing that? We can do that better. We can make that better. That's why our matriarchal society is deliberately pushed for an ideological purpose. And I'm going to stop there.
Yeah, that's definitely my sentiments as well. And I think that when it comes to purpose, there is a gap in motivation that a lot of us as parents and maybe some educators we don't cater for. That gap between toddler and adolescence, that gap, I don't think that gap is adequately catered for, because this is one of the reasons I think that crime is so prevalent. Because once a young man has developed and his cognitive thinking finds value in money, status, and what these things bring, then he understands that, okay, this is what's valuable now. I must go and get that by any means necessary. But if that value system was properly nurtured between the years of him being a toddler and him being an adult, then he could have understood the positive benefits for positive cognitive development, and understand that goal setting does not have to come at the cost of someone else's well-being. It can all
Thank
be
you.
internal. It is something that I can just see it within myself. I can work towards that and I can achieve it. That is what I strongly believe. And as you said, that story with the illustration you mentioned with your boys, I remember one time, maybe about 16 years ago, some friends and I in the area, we were playing football. And there's this guy in our circle who we know him as a renowned thief. He's stealing anything he puts his hands on. But you see, when he playing football and we treat him unfairly, he's saying, Gasa met volley, Gasa met thief something, met thief. And we have to look at him like, the irony, eh? You understand? You understand what it is to steal in a game of football, but in real life, it's not a problem. And we used to have that like a joke in the area. And of course, every time I think of it, I laugh. But that just goes to show you how us as men, we understand motivation, we understand rules, like you rightfully said in your book, Purpose Driven, the goals in which that the goals that are applied to games such as sports, that too can be applied to our academics and our motivation as young men. And one of the notions we men have to battle is understanding that our dropouts, our lack of interest in education is turning education into a female space. So when men consider me, that's not for me. I good with school. I'll just go and do my hustle. I'll sell my bears and I'll make it. But then the more men shy away from taking the courses, going to school, is the more the females right now, with all the empowerment that exists for women, they will venture into the fields that we as men are intimidated, and we make these things into a female space. And now you have what you call academic gatekeeping. There are a lot of men who want to see themselves at the top of the ladder. They want to see themselves as CEOs, as managers, but then the only barrier between them and that are the academics. And now they find themselves working amongst female peers who are senior to them. Some of them, they're intimidated by that. They have experiences of feeling less purposeful because their boss is a woman, and that has an effect on their own
Trust me.
well-being. That is interesting. I remember even hearing. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Okay, what I was saying is I remember hearing briefly locally when the police commissioner was a female. I spoke to some policemen, and to hear the sentiments of these men, knowing that the commissioner is a female, it was so laughable. Some of these men don't even work directly with the commissioner, but just the thought of it really dampened their esteem. They're like, me, I doing nothing again. And I'm saying, wow, this type of thinking still exists. And of course, we need to, as men, cherish that academic journey so we don't become a victim to academic gatekeeping and we don't find ourselves in those situations. Not that having a female boss is bad, but then working in that system and feeling less about yourself should not be the order of the day when
Not,
we shy away.
let me just tell you. Let me just tell you. I spoke to a friend of mine, a fireman, and we have that conversation everywhere we go because we can see the problem. The problem is I've been speaking about that for a very long time, and let me just tell you. When I was teaching at Monrepo, I did and I like to do this little social experiments with my class when I was teaching PE, and I always give that story. It was so fascinating to see that. I actually called the other PE teacher to see that, and if he is looking at that, he can even tell you that's true because I've been thinking of those things for a very long time. I had my PE class, so the boys were playing football and the girls were playing some ring games or something like that. And one of the girls said, okay, they want to play football. So with me just looking at the space of women are equal to men and all of that and what's going on. So I decided to make a football team, a girls football team, and I had the girls football team play against the male football team. And what was so fascinating, when the game started, the boys were playing, and you could see the boys wasn't enjoying the game because and tell you what I noticed is that when they're playing the football game, if you play hard, you playing against a girl and you play hard and you hit her and she falls, the other males will tell you, that's a girl you playing, that's you playing so hard. Right? But if you allow the girl to score and beat you, the fellows will still tell you, Kasa, girl beating you, Kasa. So either way, there is no winning for a male when the competition is against a woman. So you playing hard, you competing like naturally we don't want to compete with women. So and you see in and that's what they say in the ideological space. There is literally no difference between a man and a woman. But women have specific tendencies that they could do differently. There are certain roles that are just masculine roles. We cannot say that that's not true. And my partner was telling me right now that in the fire service, so many women are qualified to get the fire service to become a fireman, but the public service want to make the quota. The public service in the equality, they want to have 50 women, 50 men. And the problem is that the women cannot do the things that are required for the fire service, and majority of them, they want to sit behind the desk. But there are so many desk jobs. There are so many desk jobs that you could do at this point. You need the men to be able to run into a burning building. You need the men to be able to lift certain things, to do other difficult roles. So there is a fundamental difference between what a man can do and what a woman could. I'm not going to say there's not anything at the fringes that a woman can run into a burning building too, but not 8 out of 10 women can run into a burning building. If you see when they shot behind Trump, the woman was the first, the woman that was the Secret Service. She was the first one to protect herself. She was the first one to protect herself while the other men literally jump and die at Trump. Going out throughout history, men was dying in wars. Men will literally go ahead and die in wars, and the women would stay back to take care of the children. So there is evolutionarily, there is a fundamental difference between the role of men and women, and that needs to be appreciated. I'm not saying that women who have the ability to want to go and do it, take that away from them. But we cannot take away the fundamental distinction between those roles. Those roles are there, and leave it to women alone. They will choose the softer roles, and men will literally choose the more difficult roles, because women are hypergamy. Anybody that's listening, go and look for the word hypergamy. Hypergamy, women like men that are above in the social hierarchy. Women date across and above. Right? Men that are competent, they go for that. Men that are the same level with them or higher than them. And men are not hypergamy. Men go across and down. So there is a fundamental difference between what women prefer than what men prefer. So to say that you can have a role, that there are masculine roles, And I tell them, okay, we want to have all the equality that women are talking about is equality to be prime minister and stuff like that. I don't see nobody talking about equality to go and be garbage women. I don't see nobody going to talk about equality to go and fisher women. I not see nobody talking about equality to go and pump poop from the sewage. I not see none of that. All the equality I'm hearing about is equality to be in the C-suite, to be high prime minister, to be this, to be in the higher office jobs. But what about the fisher women? We need more fisher women. We need we need more of those things. We need more garbage women. We need more of those things. If we are talking about equality, we need to have equality across the board. And I will be very happy if we equalize for the garbage women, we equalize for the fisher women, equalize for the septic tank women. We need to equalize across the board. And that's my argument. And I will not ask a woman to do that. But if she is talking about she wants equality and she wants to be treated just as a man, we need to look at those jobs as well.
Yes, definitely. And I recall working with a company, I think it was roughly 3 years ago. And that company in St. Lucia has a lot of outposts. So aside from the head office, they have substations all over the island. And I had a female assistant with me who seemed very interested in that line of work. And she made her inquiries and she was wondering why all the outposts or the substations, why are they predominantly male? You know, why every time I go in a whole day, I see a male working there and stuff. And the response to her was very simple, that in that work, it's not just you being in a remote area, it's also carrying stuff that is above 60 pounds. So you have to be able to lift that weight, and it requires you to stay overnight. And in some cases, it requires you to operate heavy machinery. So you have gauges, you have high pressure rooms, you have electricity and stuff like that. And what struck me the most was that professional saying that based on their in-house study, they found that the males were more reliable workers in those remote positions. So you would have a guy coming to work every single day. But then when they did try having female staff at that thing, you had the female staff taking sick days. They took days off. They took hours that were within the day cycle, so a 8 to 5, a 9 to 3, but never any overnight. So there was a priority of safety and concern, and that's why they gravitated to having only male staff at these outposts. And this is something that I think a lot of our movements do not realize, that as much as there was this push for women to stand forth and say, me too, we want the jobs, we want the opportunities, that the studies in the US has shown that over 60 years, that with the increased opportunities that they are for women, that there is still an increase in women entering humanities. They're still pursuing the social sciences, the management, the finance, the HR, and stuff like that. So there is no longer that barrier, but it now tells you what our biology wants. And that's what you were saying.
Thank you very much.
Higher up.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Exactly. Men
That's
are more
exactly
towards
what you're
STEM. Science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. Out down to the level of the biology, the way we interpret the world. Women are more nurturers, more caregivers, and they will go for the social sciences. They will go for the social sciences, which is it's a very powerful science. And I'm not saying when you have a data set, you have the bell curve. When you're teaching, the bell curve always happens in your class. You have a few at the top, and at the fringes at the bottom, you have you have the majority at the bottom. There are some women that can do science. There are some women that can do technology. They can do mathematics. But the exception is not the rule. So when you try to re-engineer society, and that's the ideological problem that I'm seeing, when you try to deliberately re-engineer society to have an equal quota. So in mathematics, we need to have 50 women, 50 men. In technology, we need to have 50 women, 50 men, just to bring forth the equality ideology which at the end of the day, when the women get to see how high pressure that is, they now starting to complain that they don't want to do that. They want to be home by 5. They want to do this. Only men that crazy enough to go and die in wars and want to work 18-hour shifts. Only men that, because we compete with each other. We want to be the best. We want to be the best. I want to be better. When I was playing basketball, I want to be better than you. I'm going to train 24/7 to be better than you. I'm going to be the best at my work. The women and old man, I normally talk to a lot of older people, elderly, because I like the wisdom. The wisdom is so different than the wisdom of the people, the young people today. And a man was telling me, you have to watch how women operate. So if two women go out to fish, because I was giving him the joke about the women need to be equalized for fishing as well. And he was telling me, if two women go out to fish, the two women will sit down on the boat and they will talk the whole day. They will have nice conversations. They're not going to catch a fish. And they're going to come back and they will have no problems. They had a great day. They had a great day because they get a chance to talk. They get a chance to cut. They had a great day. If two men go out to fish and they come back without fish, these men even embarrassed to enter the pot. These men even embarrassed to enter the pot because they go out to achieve an aim and everybody seeing them coming back without that aim. Those men might even sleep out there. So those men might even stay out there in the water to get the fish. I'm telling you, the fellas will not come back without food because we are natural providers. That's not made up. That's not a social construct. That's how God created it. We are created that way to provide. We are created that way to protect. Men go out and die in wars on the belief that they're protecting the women and children they live in home. You imagine just cancel your life for protecting that's a different frame. And I don't believe our society appreciates it. And I'm not going to say back then, we're not going to run away from the fact that men have the shortcomings just as women have the shortcomings. We both have our shortcomings, but the shortcomings of the males have been elevated and magnified. Like you were saying, like men are viewed as such demonic and this and that, but women have the shortcomings as well. We are human. Those things are human nature. We shouldn't gender human nature. We shouldn't gender things that are human nature. We create a false dichotomy between the man and the woman. When it's really and truly, we have our rules. Some of you can do some of our rules. We too can cook, wash, clean. We can do all of that, but we are not natural nurturers. We cannot take care of a young. It's so amazing to watch how a woman taking care of a young. I cannot teach in the infant school, grade K. I'm literally saying, if I become minister one day, the grade K teachers will get more money. I personally think the grade K teachers will get more money. Personally, I cannot do that. Children stand on the line. I teach in P. The children running everywhere. You have to have such caregiving, natural tendencies to deal with about 10K children running all over the place for about 5-6 hours. I cannot do that. That's impossible for me. I can't do that. And I believe our K teachers need some more money, personally.
For sure. Yeah. And even with my son being in he's 4 now, having experienced different early childhood educational centers, I have never seen a male in those spaces. If there's a man, he's by the gate. He's a security, but he's not protecting. He's not a teacher. He's not a facilitator.
Yeah.
And for me, that is the type of reality I think we should welcome, understanding our limitations, because even I as a father, sometimes I do have my cap when it comes to dealing with my son. There are some times where I have to be very firm, and my wife would step in and she's like, you have to be compassionate. But I'm like, hey, if I tell a child to come here and he says, Daddy, no, I have to, put him in check. But then mommy will say, no, he's maybe hungry, he's tired, he's cranky. So let's deal with him like that. And I would be in total disagreement with it, but I would allow the process to unfold. And sometimes it's just amazing that my force as a male father and the gentleness of his mother, sometimes the gentleness prevails. And it bamboozles me sometimes, because for people like me, I did not grow up in that type of environment. I knew if my mom said something and my response was not in agreement, that probably could have been my last response. That could have been my last word ever. But now the tides are changing. drastically
No,
bad.
but we have to, and I'm looking at that especially in as a young father myself, and I'm having the same experiences as you, and even in the schools. And I go back and I like to interpret things from a biblical context because I'm a Bible believer. I love the Bible. The Bible is a very powerful book, and I think the misinterpretation of the Bible that causes the problem. But if you look at the idea of Adam and Eve, and you look at where Adam was the protector, and Adam was the leader in some sense, and Eve was the helpmate. And the helpmate is not a derogatory term. The helpmate is not that you are so much of the head of the individual that you're not supposed to take the advice of them. They're supposed to maximize what exactly your aim is, and your aim should be in what's the eternal and overall good, which we call God in some sense. And the sins of Eve was trying to be way too compassionate. There are certain things you're supposed to say no to. You're supposed to, and Eve was very compassionate to the fact that she allowed the belief of the snake to come into her into when she ate the fruit, because the snake influenced her to eat the fruit. So because of her natural compassionate disposition, she go ahead and did that. But that was the first mistake. But to me, the greatest mistake to me was Adam's mistake. And Adam, in my eyes, looked pathetic because Adam got the instruction not to eat the fruit, and then when Eve was overly compassionate to bring the fruit into the eating the fruit, breaking the law. And when the snake convinced her to do that, Adam had a chance to stand and say no. But Adam went ahead and listened and eat that fruit as well. So me, Adam is the biggest failure. Adam should have not included the overly compassionate aspect. The compassionate aspect of the woman is needed up to a point, but there are certain things you as the man, Adam, in some sense, not supposed to let to come in because you understand what it causes in the long term. So the son needs both the strong hand of the father to say, okay, mom, you're being way too compassionate about that decision. He is just being a little manipulative. He have to go and sleep now, and he is not hungry. Nothing is a problem. He is just being a bit defiant. And to allow defiance to rule the family structure is building up something going forward that we'll not be able to deal with on a broader scale. So you need to put that strong hand there while pay attention to what the compassionate thing is doing. And it's almost like politics in some sense, the balance of power, which one you should apply at which time. And that's very interesting. That's a very interesting challenge. Am I supposed to allow the compassionate to take control, or should I be able to implement the necessary structures and rules that I know that should work at this time? And that's the challenge between the masculine and the feminine, right then and there. Yeah, you are muted.
All right. Yeah, so for me, I definitely see the importance of masculine, and when it comes to masculine presence, and when it comes to the classroom, that I think is another factor that we must consider, how with the decreased participation of males in higher education, you have fewer males in classrooms. You have fewer academic role models. And I know for a lot of us, we grew up listening to the exploits of our Nobel laureates, Alphonse, Derek Walcott, but we must also be able to magnify those role models who are in schools, who have attained their first degree, their second degree, their terminal degree. We must be able to craft coaches out of those men and those tradesmen, just as much as we have coaches on the field. We should have coaches in the school. We should have academic
Mm-hmm.
coaches. We should have scholars who now come into those spaces and let students know that anything is possible once you put your mind to it, and you can go through school. One of my crowning experiences in school was at the end of my fifth form in St. Mary's College. We had a bit of a career day. And I recall our first speaker was a well-known lawyer who came to tell us about law. And I remember all those boys, it was about roughly 90 of us in the school, and we hearing law. So everybody's like, what that man come and say there? Law? Like, law seems boring to a bunch of 16, 17-year-old boys.
Yeah.
And he started his presentation and he said, boys, in one case, I can make as much as $80,000 a case. Everybody was like, what? And then all the boys call each other. He said, come on here, come. Because they heard the money, but they did not perceive that such a profession that we deemed as, boring and complex could give you that much return. And I remember every single point in that presentation, because all we heard was the money at the beginning. And we're like, okay, we want to be like this guy when we grow up. So as much as we do have persons who come on a periodic basis, particularly for our Form 5s, I think this is something that we can start in the secondary schools from as early as Form 1. That maybe once a term or once a month, get those male coaches who have been distinguished in their fields to come and speak to the boys, to let them know, it is possible to go through the educational system, make it fulfilling, so you don't just feel like you're in a classroom doing nothing. We can make the alternatives feel appealing. So even though you, as a male, may not want to go to university, but we have technical programs, we have NSDC, we have short courses at UWI, at Monroe College, and these are just as accessible and rewarding. We should be able to sell the idea to a boy that perhaps you can do auto mechanics for 2 years at Safa and open your own side garage if, you have the resources to do so. We should be able to make that appealing, as well as entrepreneurship, giving men the opportunity to control their own destiny without academic gatekeeping. You still need that basic level of knowledge, how to add, how to subtract, how to read, how to write. You need those things. And for me, higher education, I know for the men that I've spoken to, higher education doesn't match the urgent financial obligations that they have. So for example, if you grew up in a single parent household, there's 3 of you, you have 2 younger brothers, your mom is footing all the bills, and you are 18. The last thing on your mind is to go back to school and give your mom another bill. You want to jump into the work environment and see how you can help mom. And that reality does exist. That's some of the pressures that some of our young men face. So that is why they go for the quicker, more independent routes.
And that's why, to piggyback on that, that's why I'm publicly we spoke about that in private, but now to publicly empower your organization on board with what we're doing in December. We have a financial literacy and community development summit. And what we're trying to do, we're trying to get speakers, individuals that can inspire the young men. We're trying to get at least 60 to 70 young men at Bexor Center. And, what we're trying to do, we're trying to get speakers like Reno. We're trying to bring in the Prime Minister or somebody from the Prime Minister's office. We're trying to bring a youth economy. We're trying to bring a representative from the creative economy, and we're trying to bring some persons from the banks as well. And the whole objective is to try to speak to young men about the positive ways that they could work on financial development and give them a form of financial literacy. And when I speak to young men, I try to bring, you should be able to work in towards retiring your mother. I personally want to retire my mother. I personally want to get my mother out of that working force and retire my mother. But I want to do it. And that's the thing about the young men that commit the crime. They have that same objective as well. But they use destructive ways to get that done. So what I'm trying to do, I'm trying to change the destructive. I'm trying to keep the aim, but change the process to the end. You do not have to participate in destructive behaviors for you to be able to retire your mother, for you to take care of your girlfriend, to take care of your child, to take care of this. You can help positive development in society, bring value to society. I wish we would get Reno so Reno can talk about his story, talk about skills development. So we were looking at the state, we want to bring the market. I read this book that I'm the third pillar, and the third pillar talk about how the market and the state is leaving the community behind. So we want to bring a representative from the market, which is Rand or any other person. We want to bring the prime minister or somebody from the prime minister's office or another minister to represent the state, to let them know the state needs them. St. Lucia needs you. There are things St. Lucia needs. That St. Lucia needs you. The market needs your skills. You can help develop skills. We want to bring the banks to let them know how they can apply for loans and mortgages and what they need. And because a lot of young men do not have that institutional knowledge, basic. I know young men that not have a bank account, that not have a credit union account. I want to bring the youth economy to let them know, okay, the youth economy is have those opportunities if you have a business idea. So I personally want them to stop the crime. Personally, I need to lower our crime moving because we're already in 68, 59, 64 this year, and the year not even end. We are maintaining the patterns of 60, 70. We need to try to let them change the destructive force into a more constructive force. And we're putting this together, and we would like you to be on board with that. We need to work together as a common goal, try to get that done. And I really want you to be on board with executing that with us on December 11th.
Sure. Definitely. You have my support. Anything regarding, for me, the upliftment of males is a powerful move. And it's just like, for example, in church, whenever you pray, we have this, I forget what verse it is. Whenever the 2 or 3 are gathered in his name, there we are in the midst of them. There the Lord is in the midst of us. And for me,
Correct.
when we do pray and we get a lot of men coming together, decreeing, declaring, praying, that is such a powerful intervention on behalf of any church, because even in church spaces, it's dominated by women who have the natural ability to serve. But when men come together and they pray, great things happen. I've seen it happen in church spaces, and I know within our endeavors, within this initiative that you're proposing, getting all these young boys together, that's going to be generational transformation. Because one young man change, that's an entire lineage change. It only takes, for example, in our current business world, we have families dominating the business landscape. For example, when I look at a man like J.Q. Charles and what he did back in the early 20th century, his great grandchildren are still benefiting today. So if that one man can change, and you can change 90 or 80 or 70 young men, just imagine the landscape change we will have. So I'm definitely on board to assist however I can, and I'm hoping that once this message has been shared and cut and edited and delivered, that it will continue to inspire young men, as you've been doing first in your classroom with your boys, as well as what you do within the community, work with the Denry Falcons, with the work that you do with ideas for men, St. Lucia. It's just phenomenal, man. I'm so proud of you, and I'm happy at what you're doing, man. I'm happy at that.
Thank you very much. So we passed 1 hour. We can stop now, and we can continue talking another time. All right?
No problem, bro.
Thank you for being here. I really enjoyed the conversation. I hope this was worth it, and I hope it can reach far as it should. So.
Yes.